The movie begins with Chef Paul and his restaurant, Hunger, which is one of the biggest restaurants in the world. Chef Paul is extremely strict, and the most important thing to him is discipline, to the point that everyone fears him. The kitchen is in a constant state of intense pressure. Paul's goal in his restaurant is to make his customers so hungry that when they finally eat, they devour the food eagerly, even if it's just average. This is the reason behind the restaurant's name. Meanwhile, in a poor neighborhood, we see Aoi, a young woman working with her father in his restaurant, Shuyo. Aoi is very skilled, and despite being in a low-income area, the restaurant is always crowded. The specialty of the restaurant is fried noodles made with a secret recipe passed down from her ancestors. However, Aoi is not happy with this job and dreams of something bigger. One day, a man visits the restaurant and, after tasting her food, tells her that she is too talented to work in such a place. He hands her a business card for Hunger and tells her she deserves to work there. Aoi is surprised but takes the card and puts it in her pocket. Later, she meets her friends and tells them about the restaurant and the man who gave her the card. They tell her that Hunger and its owner, Chef Paul, are among the most famous names in Thailand and even the world. They are shocked that she doesn't know about him. That night, Aoi looks at the card again and searches for information about the restaurant and Chef Paul. She finds pictures of him with many celebrities praising his food and watches videos of him training young chefs. She becomes so engrossed in the idea that she struggles to focus on her work. The man who gave her the card returns, and this time, Aoi decides to go with him. However, she feels self-conscious about her appearance and clothes because the restaurant is extremely luxurious, unlike anything she has seen before. He takes her into the kitchen and asks her to wait. Aoi looks around in awe, fascinated by everything. She picks up a knife, but just then, the manager arrives and yells at her to put it down, startling her so much that she drops it. It turns out that there is another candidate besides Aoi, and both of them will undergo a cooking test, with Chef Paul choosing only one to work at the restaurant. The other candidate, Pat, is arrogant and looks down on Aoi, believing she won't be able to compete with him. He is a graduate of a prestigious culinary school and is confident he will outperform her. As soon as Chef Paul enters the room, everyone is intimidated and stands in line. Pat, who talks too much, keeps trying to chat with Paul, but the chef repeatedly embarrasses him, reminding him that he wasn't asked to speak. Paul gives them a simple challenge: to make fried rice. Pat laughs at how easy the task is and immediately begins cooking. When Paul looks at Aoi, who hasn't moved yet, she quickly starts preparing as well. Pat, being overconfident, chooses freshly cooked rice, while Aoi, unsure at first, selects a specific type of pan and decides to use leftover rice from the fridge. Pat mocks her choice, but Aoi focuses on her dish. When they finish, Aoi's plate looks very simple, making Pat certain that he has won. Chef Paul begins judging the dishes, starting with Aoi's. Without even tasting Pat's, he tells him to go home. Pat, shocked and arrogant, insists that his dish is not bad and that Aoi's looks terrible. He argues that he deserves to work in the restaurant. In response, Paul slaps him, throws his bag at him, and tells him to leave. Paul then asks Aoi why she wants to work for him. She replies that she wants to be special. He moves closer and tells her that the scent of noodles in her hair from her previous job has no place in a kitchen like this. He instructs her to take a shower and prepare herself. Aoi does as he says, puts on the restaurant uniform, and feels incredibly happy. When she enters the kitchen, Tun introduces her to the team. He explains that there are 7 chefs, including Chef Paul. He introduces Don, Paul's second-in-command, to the soup chef, King, who handles cold dishes, sauces, and desserts, Bai, the kitchen assistant, and himself, Tun, the head chef's youngest assistant. Tun tells Aoi that she is likely replacing someone who was recently fired and will probably be in charge of frying. At that moment, Paul arrives and informs them that tomorrow there will be an exclusive birthday party with 15 guests, averaging 40 years old. The host is General Primsak, and all the attendees are prominent political figures. The party's theme is meat and blood, meaning that every dish must be juicy, leaving a lingering sensation in the mouth after eating, and the colors should resemble blood. Paul assigns Aoi the task of frying a very expensive cut of meat without losing its juices. He explains that the entire process depends on how the meat is cut and instructs her to practice. Aoi, feeling nervous, struggles to cut it properly. Paul yells at her, telling her that the cut is extremely valuable and that she doesn't understand what she's doing. It's her first time handling something this delicate, and the pressure overwhelms her. He then asks her to cook it, but every time she tries, he scolds her for overcooking it. She keeps trying with multiple pieces, but each time, he tells her it's wrong. He reminds her that she was hired for this specific task. If she can't do it, she has no place in the kitchen. Paul gives her two choices: keep trying until she masters frying the meat or return to her father's noodle shop. He then leaves. Overcome with stress, Aoi breaks down in tears, unable to handle Paul's harsh criticism. She considers quitting, but ultimately decides to stay and keep trying. She practices all night, enduring burns from the heat, but refuses to give up. While the rest of the team goes home, she remains in the kitchen, determined to perfect the dish. The next morning, when everyone arrives, they find Aoi asleep on the kitchen floor. Tan wakes her up, noticing that her hands are covered in burns. When Chef Paul arrives, Aoi immediately starts frying the meat again. This time, she executes it flawlessly, exactly as he instructed. However, Paul doesn't say a word after tasting it. He simply tells the team to get dressed and prepare for the party. The event is filled with celebrities, politicians, and high-profile guests. A wealthy businessman named Toss, who owns a large restaurant chain, approaches the kitchen area. Paul immediately tells him that this space is for him and his team only. Toss had previously offered to fund Paul's restaurant, but Paul refused, preferring to work independently. Since the kitchen is open to the party, Paul instructs Aoi to fry the meat in front of everyone. This time, Aoi is full of confidence and executes the dish perfectly. The audience applauds her performance. As the team prepares and serves the dishes, General Primsak and his guests watch in admiration. The final presentation is exactly as envisioned, deep red in color, under the theme of meat and blood, with a juicy texture that leaves a lasting impression. The guests are so impressed by the taste that they literally lick their plates clean. After the meal, Toss hands Aoi his business card, telling her to contact him if she ever needs anything. Aoi returns to her father's restaurant, where Tan later calls her to join him on a trip. They go shopping for special ingredients, and he explains how Chef Paul always sources the best ingredients, most of which come from poor communities. This way, even the less fortunate benefit financially from selling their goods to the wealthy. Aoi is amazed by Paul, seeing him as a kind-hearted person despite his intimidating and strict demeanor. Back at the restaurant, Aoi asks Paul what her task is for the day. He tells her there's nothing to fry and suggests she clean instead. She refuses, saying she didn't join to do cleaning. In response, he assigns her to cutting duty instead of buy. However, he repeatedly criticizes her for being too slow. When she accidentally cuts herself, Paul coldly remarks that frying is the only thing she knows how to do and warns her not to think she's more important than she is. He then walks away. Later, the team prepares for another high-profile event. While talking, they express their desire to experience the luxurious lives of the guests they serve. Dong tells them that these people don't actually care about who they are or what they do. The only reason they hired Chef Paul is to show off. Beyond that, they mean nothing to them. Aoi returns to her father's restaurant and prepares a piece of meat for him. While he admits that it tastes good, he tells her it's not as enjoyable as the fried noodles they love. Her brother playfully mocks her for acting superior just because she works with wealthy people now. Later, Aoi takes some noodles from her father's restaurant and visits Tan at his home. Tan teaches her how to properly cut and cook meat, while she, in turn, teaches him how to use a wok. They cook a dish together, and Tan gives her feedback on how to improve. As they spend time together, they grow closer. The next day at the restaurant, Aoi prepares a piece of meat and lets Uncle Dong taste it. He gives her some feedback, pointing out that the fat isn't properly cooked. He tells her she still has a long way to go and warns her not to get ahead of herself or think she already knows how to cook. At that moment, King takes out a cigarette, and Tan tries to warn him that smoking is forbidden. Just then, Paul enters, and King quickly hides the cigarette. But Paul notices. He orders King to take it out, put it in his mouth, then drops it into the soup King was making. He forces him to drink the soup as a lesson, emphasizing that he won't risk his reputation because of one team member's recklessness. Paul then announces that there is a thief among them. An expensive cut of meat and foie gras are missing. He demands that the culprit confess. Otherwise, he will check the security cameras, fire the thief, and call the police. Tu confesses, admitting that he took them because, after years of cooking luxurious meals for the rich, he had never tasted them himself. Paul coldly tells him that such food is meant only for the wealthy. He says that if Tu had money, he could hire him to cook for him, but since that's not the case, his time in the kitchen is over. Paul then declares that Aoi will be his assistant the next day, while Dong will take over both her and Tu's duties, since the team is now short-staffed. The team is shocked by Paul's decision, but has no choice but to accept it. The next day, they arrive at their new workplace. Paul gets furious when he discovers traces of shrimp in Tan's soup. He yells at them because the young girl they're cooking for has a shellfish allergy, and drinking the soup could have been dangerous for her. To salvage the situation, he quickly makes a new soup using instant noodle seasoning and tap water. Surprisingly, the family still enjoys it. After the job, they return to the restaurant, where Paul angrily demands to know how such a mistake happened. Tan insists that shrimp wasn't on the menu, and that everything was prepared in their kitchen. However, Paul finds shrimp in the pot where Tan made the soup. He immediately confronts Dong, realizing that he sabotaged the dish out of jealousy toward Tan and Aoi. Paul berates him, calling him a failure, and declares that he will never allow him to cook again. Pushed to his limit, Dong grabs a knife and stabs Paul before walking away. Paul is rushed to the hospital, but the shocking part is that no family, relatives, or even close friends come to see him. Only his staff is by his side. The next day, Aoi visits Paul in the hospital. She finds him arguing with a nurse and refusing to eat. She brings him fried noodles from her father's restaurant, telling him that they were made with love. Paul eats them, but as expected, refuses to compliment her. Instead, he dismisses the idea of cooking with love, saying it's a worthless notion that only poor and unsuccessful people use as an excuse. Aoi then asks him what made him become a chef and what motivated him. Paul tells her that it was a jar of caviar. He explains that his mother was a maid for a wealthy family. As a child, he always wondered why his family wasn't like them, why they couldn't eat the same luxurious food, especially caviar, which he often saw the rich eating. One day, he stole a jar of caviar to taste it. But just as he was about to, the homeowner's son caught him and accused him of being a thief. Startled, Paul dropped the jar, and it shattered on the floor. His mother had to work for months to repay the cost of that tiny jar, while Paul was forced to clean up the mess. As he wiped the floor, he tasted the caviar, and to his surprise, it was disgusting. That's when he realized that poor people eat just to fill their stomachs. But when they have money, they seek out expensive and unique foods, regardless of how they actually taste. From that moment on, he decided to become a chef for the rich, to make sure they were always hungry for his food, always needing him. Aoi returns to her father's restaurant, only to discover that he has fallen seriously ill and is in the hospital. She rushes there, only to find that the hospital has no available beds. She fights with the staff until they finally agree to examine him. He undergoes surgery, but the facility is overcrowded, and he is placed in a barely livable space, which is all they can afford. Feeling helpless, Aoi breaks down in tears, guilt-ridden for not being there for her father as she used to. As she leaves the hospital, she sees a news report about a man who murdered his wife and daughter due to depression and financial struggles. Shockingly, it turns out to be the same family they had recently cooked for. Aoi is baffled. Why would a family drowning in debt hire Chef Paul for a lavish meal, instead of using the money to pay off some of their debts? She then realizes that this was precisely Paul's goal, to make the rich crave his food so much that they prioritize it over everything else, even when they're struggling. Later, Paul and the team travel deep into the forest, where they hunt and capture a rare, illegal bird to cook. Aoi protests, telling Paul that this has nothing to do with cooking, it's about the law. Paul coldly responds that she will never become a true chef as long as she thinks with her emotions. Frustrated, Aoi declares that she is quitting and walks away. Tan follows her, leaving the team as well. Back home, Aoi remembers the business card she received from Tas at General Primsak's party. She calls him and arranges a meeting. Tas showers her with praise, telling her he believes she has great potential and that he will help her become one of the world's top chefs. He takes her to a new location and sets up a restaurant just for her. They name it Flame. Aoi invites Tan to join her team, but he refuses, saying he can't work under her. Aoi starts working, and Tas gathers a team to support her. She prepares several dishes, which Tas tastes and praises, saying they are good but lack boldness. She is still imitating Paul. He encourages her to be more daring, so Aoi begins experimenting with new dishes, pushing herself to prove she is even better than Paul. The restaurant's grand opening arrives, and the media is there to capture the moment. The place is packed, with long lines of people waiting to get in. Everyone is amazed by her success. Later, Aoi visits Tan at the restaurant he opened, but it's struggling and on the verge of closing. It's clear that he's envious of her success because she surpassed him. She tells him that the reason he hasn't achieved his dream isn't because he lacks talent, but because he hasn't mastered his craft. Tan bitterly responds that she sounds just like Chef Paul now. Aoi leaves him and walks away. Aoi then discusses Tan with Tas, asking if he can help him. Tas dismisses Tan as just an average chef, saying there are many like him. However, he agrees to talk to him and see if there's anything he can do. Tas then informs Aoi that their first major event will take place next week at a high society party hosted by Madame Milky. The event will be attended by influential figures, making it Aoi's chance to showcase herself to the world. Later, Aoi calls Oh, who congratulates her on achieving everything she wanted and urges her to return home, especially since her father will soon be discharged from the hospital. However, Aoi insists that she still has more to accomplish and asks Oh to take care of her father. Oh tells her that he misses her and that people in their neighborhood say she has changed. But Aoi is focused solely on one thing, achieving even greater success. During their conversation, Aoi is startled when Chef Paul appears in front of her. She prepares a dish for him, and for the first time ever, he smiles after tasting something. But when she asks for his opinion, genuinely wanting to hear it, he dismisses its importance. He tells her that Tas has already made her famous, and people will keep coming to her because of him. However, Paul warns her that her success will make her cling to it at any cost, just as she lost Tan, and this is only the beginning. Eventually, she will lose the very essence of what makes her special, just as he did. He reminds her that when he was in the hospital, no one was there for him. Aoi is deeply affected by his words and finds herself unable to respond. Before leaving, Paul tells her that they will meet again at Madame Milky's birthday party because she is not the only chef Madame Milky has hired for the event. Aoi is left in shock, realizing that she might not succeed against a legendary chef like Paul. The day of the party arrives, and Aoi's first shock comes when Madame Milky asks about Paul instead of her, as she is still relatively unknown. Tas is the only one with real recognition, but just then, Tas arrives with Tan, bringing him along to support Aoi because he realizes they care about each other. Tan encourages her to focus and succeed, reminding her that all of this is just a distraction. Aoi and her team begin preparing their dishes. When Madame Milky takes her first bite, everyone is mesmerized by the flavors. But suddenly, the lights dim, drawing everyone's attention. Paul starts a dramatic performance, lowering a whole carcass from the ceiling, expertly butchering it, sprinkling spices over it, and setting fire beneath it to roast it. He locks eyes with Aoi in a silent challenge. The spectacle is breathtaking, as Paul's philosophy is to make people hunger for his food. As expected, the entire crowd gathers around him, almost forgetting about Aoi's presence. But Aoi refuses to give up. She continues cooking, and soon, the guests turn back to see what she is creating. She prepares fried noodles inspired by her grandmother and father's recipe. As she cooks, memories of her family flood her mind, and she delivers a heartfelt speech about family, comfort, and cooking with love. Everyone who tastes her dish is moved, not just by the flavor but by the emotions behind it. But of course, Paul isn't done with his show yet. He challenges Aoi once again by making a soup using the same noodle spices she had used before. Since no one knows the real ingredients of the broth, it's natural for them to be amazed by a dish created by a renowned chef like him. Paul then approaches Aoi and tells her that this is the final lesson he will teach her. No matter what she creates, how impressive it looks, or how creative it is, people's beliefs are hard to change. That's why, even when he served a simple dish, he still won. Because over the years, he made people crave whatever he created, no matter what it was. At that moment, the police arrive to arrest Paul. Messages start popping up on everyone's phones, showing a video of him serving a famous politician a dish made from a rare, illegally hunted bird. This was the same day Aoi had resigned. It turns out that Tun had recorded the footage, and with Tas's help, they leaked it to the media and press. Paul starts ranting, convinced that Aoi was the one behind this. He tells her that she may have won now, but he will return stronger than before. Aoi breaks down in tears. She had considered Paul her mentor and never wanted things to end this way. She looks at Tun and Tas, feeling heartbroken over everything that has happened. Tas tells her that she will soon take Paul's place, and that Tun is the reason for all of this. Tas then tells her that he will help Tun because the video he had was the key to their success. Aoi leaves them and walks away, but Tun follows her, telling her that he listened to her words, chased his dream, and succeeded, no matter what the method was. She doesn't respond. Aoi walks away from the party, carrying the pan she first used in her father's restaurant and had been using all along. As she walks through the streets, she sees poor people sitting on sidewalks, eating whatever they can. She finally arrives at her father's restaurant, only to find it closed because she was the one who had been running it and helping him. The moment she sees her father, she bursts into tears and hugs him. Aoi decides that she will not return to high-end restaurants. Instead, she will reopen her father's restaurant and promote it on social media, with O and her sister helping her. She realizes that this is where she truly belongs, with her family and her people. She won't lose them for the sake of a hollow dream and a life that was never hers. Family, security, and love matter far more than fame and fortune.